It was the morning of October 16th, 1793. A hush had fallen over the grim walls of the Conciergerie prison in Paris. Inside, a queen sat alone, stripped of her jewels, her throne, and her dignity. But what went through her mind in those final, fleeting hours? What did she whisper as she stepped towards the guillotine, knowing that the sharp blade of revolution was about to claim her? Join us on Tales Beyond Time as we unveil the astonishing last moments of Marie Antoinette, the woman whose name became synonymous with both extravagance and tragedy. The night before her execution was one of silent torment. Locked in her cell, Marie Antoinette had been wrenched from her family, her children, and the gilded halls of Versailles. She had already endured months of humiliation, her hair now cut short in anticipation of the guillotine. Her dress, a simple white chemise, was a stark contrast to the luxurious gowns she once wore. She spent those last hours in prayer, kneeling on the cold stone floor. Perhaps she was thinking of her late husband, King Louis XVI, who had been executed just 9 months earlier. Perhaps she was thinking of her son, the young Dauphin, now lost to her within the merciless prison walls. The dampness of the cell seeped into her bones, and exhaustion weighed heavily upon her, yet sleep would not come. Outside, the restless city of Paris roared with anticipation, crowds already gathering for the morning's spectacle. The queen, once revered and adorned in diamonds, was now a prisoner awaiting her final judgment. At dawn, the guards arrived. There would be no formal escort, no last-minute pleas for clemency. The revolution had made its decision. A priest was summoned to offer her final rites, though Marie Antoinette, a devout Catholic, had been stripped of any dignity or comfort. Unlike her husband, who had been taken to his death in a covered carriage, Marie Antoinette was thrown onto a simple wooden cart. The streets of Paris had become a chaotic sea of faces, some jeering, others watching in silence. Gone was the regal Queen of France. Before them now was merely Marie Capet, a woman condemned by the people. Her hands were bound tightly, her body frail from months of suffering. She shivered, though not from the morning chill. The air was thick with the scent of sweat, dirt, and the metallic tang of blood from past executions. Among the onlookers were those who once adored her, who had celebrated her lavish balls and mimicked her extravagant fashions. Now they stood motionless, some averting their eyes, while others whispered about how much she had aged in captivity. Her face, once radiant with youth and excess, was now gaunt, pale, and marked with sorrow. Her journey to the guillotine took 2 grueling hours. As she stood in the cart, hands bound, she could see the grand buildings of Paris, places she had once graced with her presence, the Tuileries Palace, where she had lived under house arrest, the Place de la Concorde, once a place of grandeur, now soaked in the blood of the Revolution. The once majestic streets now echoed with the chants of revolutionaries, calling for the downfall of the monarchy. Eyewitnesses recalled that she held herself with an eerie calmness. She did not weep, nor did she beg. Instead, she gazed ahead, composed, as if she had already accepted her fate long before that moment. At one point, a woman in the crowd threw rotten vegetables at her, screaming, "Murderess!" But the queen did not flinch. The jeers and accusations had long since become background noise to her. Yet, as she passed by the convent where she had once secretly donated to the poor, a small group of nuns lowered their heads in silent prayer. Perhaps, in that moment, Marie Antoinette found a shred of solace, knowing that not all had turned against her. Finally, she arrived at the scaffold. As she was led up the wooden steps, her bound hands made movement difficult. In an instant of misstep, she accidentally stepped on the executioner's foot. Her last recorded words, "Pardon me, sir, I did not do it on purpose." Even in the face of death, she maintained an air of poise and courtesy. The executioner quickly strapped her to the plank. The crowd fell into an eerie silence, and then Marie Antoinette was gone, but her story was far from over. For centuries, she has been painted as both a villain and a victim. Was she truly the frivolous queen who callously dismissed the plight of her people? Or was she merely a scapegoat, a woman caught in the tempest of a revolution? Her execution was meant to mark the end of monarchy in France, yet her image would haunt history forever. In later years, historians would reveal that the infamous phrase, "let them eat cake," had never actually been spoken by her. Memoirs written by those who once served her painted a picture of a woman who was not heartless, but instead trapped by the circumstances of her birth and station. Years later, as France descended into further turmoil under Robespierre's rule, even those who had cheered for her death would come to question whether the revolution had gone too far. Many who had witnessed her final moments later recounted how she had faced death with a quiet dignity that belied the caricature of an out-of-touch queen. And so, the tale of Marie Antoinette's last moments comes to an end. But history is not just about the past. It is a mirror, reflecting the complexities of power, fate, and human nature. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the final days of one of history's most infamous queens, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Tales Beyond Time. Until next time, let the echoes of history guide your path.